Hey everyone, welcome to The Infinite Errand, a podcast about the work we do before we win as we talk with creatives, artists, and small business owners about where they started, what nearly stopped them, and why they're still going. On the show today, how two designers who each built their own successful careers in freelance graphic design came together as friends and eventually business partners who started their own creative agency called Young Jerks, and how they learned to turn friendship into a strength instead of a liability. If you ever had that moment where you thought about starting a business with a friend, you probably remember how exciting that feels. You're talking about work and life, and one of you says, "We should do something together." And for a second, it feels amazing. You start imagining the studio, the brand, the product. You talk about all the things that you do differently. And for a moment, it feels like you've cracked the code. And then, more often than not, reality steps in. Jobs get serious, money gets complicated, someone moves, and the idea fades. Not because it was bad, but because it was fragile. My guests today are Dan Cassaro and Dan Christopherson. And in their case, that idea didn't fade. Over more than a decade, they've built a creative partnership that survived freelance life, agency life, hiring a team, making payroll, launching physical products, and learning, sometimes the hard way, what it actually costs to keep working with people you care about. This isn't a story about overnight success. It's about patience, about trust, about sneaking seriousness into play, and finding ways to keep the work human, even as the stakes get higher. I'm Tyler Deeb, founder of Miscellaneous Goods Company, and this is Dan Cassaro and Dan Christopherson on The Infinite Errand.
I remember we were in one of our first trips together. We were in South Carolina. This is probably 12 years ago. And Dan was giving a talk at the AIGA, and he said something like, "How many times do you think I can say diaper while I'm up there?" And I just remember being like, oh man, he's giving a talk, he's educating, he's talking about these things, but he's also just still doing a bit, or he's still,
I did it too.
He did it, yeah.
I snuck the word diaper in 5 times.
5 times he said diaper.
Was the goal to sneak it in without it ever feeling like a bit?
Totally.
So that, yeah.
Yep.
And you feel it, you pulled it off.
He did. And no one in the
was...
audience had any idea what was going on. He was just like, if I sent the wrong file to a client, I'd be like, oh no, I just filled my diaper.
There's a good chance that I thought I was being really smooth about it at the time, and that a ton of these people in the audience at this professional conference were like, why does he keep saying diaper so much, man? Right. That's weird.
Give me an idea of what it was like in your homes when you were growing up, and kind of the family dynamic and kind of where you sat in that.
I'm the middle child. I'm very much the middle child. I have an older brother who is 18 months older than me, and then I have a little sister. And I'm very much the middle child in terms of being the mediator in the family between my brother and sister. My brother and sister will fight, and I will be in between both of them. And yeah. I definitely, for some reason, have taken on that role, which is weird because in other parts of my life, I'm more antagonistic.
Yeah, totally.
I'm sort of a troll to everyone else, including my friends. Yeah. But in this family dynamic, I think that's unique. But
so they don't see you that way at all in your family. You're not the one that pokes.
No, I think one-on-one, I am kind of like that with them. But it's in a group, and the way that the puzzle piece that I am in the group dynamic is usually that. But one-on-one, I am always a little bit of a pain in the ass, I think, or just kind of needling people.
So you're saying you feel like you're the bridge between your family, or something that connects the family, or keeps peace in the family?
I think a little bit, specifically in my sibling situation. I think I am.
Yeah.
But the other part of being the middle child is definitely being the one who's always searching, wants to dress different, have a different identity,
Because you're always getting lost or left behind or
Pay
like,
attention to me.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think that's part of it too. I also think that's one of the reasons that I probably became interested in art at a young age too. You know,
Is to separate yourself.
yeah, just to be like, this is my thing. Whatever that thing was at the time.
I have two middle children because, of our family size or dynamic. And I see all that, what you're just saying, in both my middles. And I've seen it in my older brother, who's the middle child too. It's pretty interesting how yeah.
That shows up quite a bit in our dynamic at work, and I never really connected it, but Dan and I maintain a really healthy sort of side text chat about like, oh man, I'm trying to like deliver this art direction and I think I'm sounding kind of weird or too prescriptive. Can you walk me through it? Or like there's like an interpersonal dynamic at work. We also have another co-founder, Meg, who's on the leadership team of Young Jerks.
The best. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Love Meg. I didn't realize that you all made her a part of the founding team.
At Weast Coast, she is.
Yeah.
And then
oh my God, that's
heavily
perfect.
involved in. Yeah, she's a co-founder at Weast Coast, but she's just sort of, because she's been at Young Jerks so long, it's just sort of part of the leadership team and has a big say in a lot of
The best, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I'll be like, Dan, how am I handling this conversation? And so much of his response is like mediator or like, whereas maybe sometimes I'm looking for my friend Dan or like the poker, like let's fucking get into this, and he's like, well, here's how I see it. And that's probably necessary, but I didn't realize how much experience he has as middle child to offer that,
I'm going to ask you a question, Dan, but I'm going to kind of clarify something for the listener. Both these guys are named Dan. So
right.
We have Dan Cassaro and Dan Christopherson. So I'm going to refer to them by their last names. Christopherson, like what was it like for you growing up? Like how big was your family? Where did you fit into that?
I am one of 7.
Jeez.
So yeah, huge Mormon family.
I guess that's kind of small for a Mormon family, though.
Yeah.
You guys were more progressive.
My mom lost my oldest sister at birth, but I try and just to sort of like honor this idea, say I'm one of 7, but I grew up with, one of 6 siblings.
That's awesome.
And I, for I think all intents and purposes, was the oldest. My older brother had really rough childhood, such a sweetie, but like he had to kind of live growing up as a gay kid in a really close Mormon community, which I think just wrecked him. He turned out to be, the sweetest man of all, and I love him to death, but had a rough time. So I think I filled in as like oldest brother or oldest, leader of the siblings, favorite kid to my mom for sure. And so I think I was able to sort of watch him struggle and respond to that in a way where I could be like
step up.
Step up a little bit. And I just kind of, I watched him struggle in this culture, and I watched him sort of try and like find his place. And it was much easier for me to be like, okay, cool, man. I just like to like skateboard, and, I was into like punk rock and like straight edge and all these sort of things. So I had whatever my counterculture, like positive peer pressure rebellion held nothing to what he was dealing with,
Yeah.
And then, in a Mormon community, I'm surrounded by, my both of my parents were one of 6 or one of 7, and all of my aunts and uncles had 5 or 6 or 7 kids. My best friend cousins growing up had 8 kids. So I have a younger sister who she was born when I was 8, and in a Mormon community, how to like take care of babies and take care of little kids. So I was like changing her diapers and putting her to bed, and
how old are you at this time? Like that's a like would you grow up? Would you say you grew up young?
I don't know. I think I was still probably like pretty playful and immature, but just in my community, we knew how to watch little kids. We knew how to handle babies, and it probably helped me be a little bit more baby hungry when I was older, or more mature with kids, or more ready for them. But I think I was still pretty playful and wild as a kid.
Babies are pretty awesome. Like I don't want to have another baby, but like I want to hold another baby.
I feel the same way.
Yeah. I mean, totally. Christopherson, I'd love. This is a long time ago. You spoke at Creative Works when it was early on. And I remember you talking about your dad, and you're talking about your dad as a storyteller.
Yeah.
just this, he exaggerated stories and he told like larger than life versions of what happened. And that used to like annoy you as a kid. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I mean, I grew up in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and so doing like government Utah studies as a kid in junior high and then doing studies of the church, it was all the same story. You know, Mormons fled, founded Salt Lake City, and then built the government. So there's no, it's all overlap between these like wild, fantastic religious stories and like actual historic grounded stories. So I had a hard time discerning whether or not like a miraculous flock of seagulls really descended on a field and ate all the crickets that were eating their crops, or that was just like a story told to generations to encourage you to pray and think about preparation and plant your crops at the right time, you know? So my dad just like culturally encouraged that kind of fantasy. So on one part of it, it was really amazing to grow up in a culture like that where I could talk about angels and golden plates and things, and I could, you know, pull from these like rich stories in my illustrations and things. And then on the other hand, it was really hard sometimes to like think about what my dad specifically, who is just this like, who is this like wild character. I mean, I think I told a story one time. I was driving home in my late teens or early teens, and it was midnight, and my headlights like cut across the highway as I was turning into our house, and I saw my dad dressed in black running with a deer carcass across the highway. And I see this person, I'm like, who the fuck's this or whatever, and I pull up, and my dad gives me this like whisper thing, and then motions for me to come on. And I follow him into our backyard.
Was it like a neighbor's wild deer?
No, it was roadkill. It was half of a deer, you know, that had been like roadkill, and he was pulling it into our backyard to string it up and cut it up and feed to his hawks, who he was like raising hawks and falcons. And the more I tell that story, because of my background, the more it turns into like him wearing ninja gear, and he like killed the deer with a sword, and like, you know, I think the truth of it is I probably got a lot of joy out of it, but it is probably his approach to sort of life and the playfulness of it is what ended, you know, his marriage with my mom. So there was probably a little bit of like a rough thing for me to be like, oh man, I was raised with this specific looseness around storytelling and life and concepts, but then
probably hard, like, not because it's tied to those other things, to not like resent or have complicated feelings about some of that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is true
100%.
for all your parents' stuff, probably.
Yeah. Like all those things there, you have to like figure out how to glean the good and like edit the, you know, what didn't work in the situations. And you told that story, I don't know, 10 years ago in Memphis. And I want you to know, it really actually did impact me to where like I took certain more liberties with my stories, because I think what you were talking about from the stage was that the point isn't like to be exacting in everything you say and getting this like perfect history of events, but it's to communicate maybe a story or a lesson or an experience, or to get a laugh. And there's like certain liberties you're allowed to take. And obviously you got to follow your conscience, and everyone's gonna have a different conscience, but some details just don't matter.
I can't tell you how many times as an adult I'm telling a story, and then somebody will be like, well, do you remember if it was like 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock at night? And you know, my response is, I don't know, but let's really actually look into that. Like, was it 4 p.m. or 5 p.m.? Like, let me tell a fucking
That's
story.
a really good question. Yeah.
And that's like true for music and a whole bunch of different creative pursuits, like knowing how to move through those spaces.
Or the idea that you're going to walk away from, whether it's like a cool piece of graphic design or a story, and mostly hold on to the emotion and the feeling you got rather than the specific details of it.
What's the takeaway? What's like the main takeaway from it? Being able to see that before you get to the finish line, so you know how to grapple with it.
Yeah. And just to know how to conserve your energy. I mean, early on, I feel like in our careers, like we put so much energy in everything, and you can, because you have the energy then to do that. But then as you do get older and you don't have that same like bag or like that deep well of energy. But we do get smarter, hopefully. And you're like, no, I only need to spend 10 minutes on that part. And then I need to spend an hour on that part instead of spending an hour on every part and then spending 12 hours on something you could take 4 hours.
Yeah. And the thing that you get better at too, it comes at a cost, like you were saying, of having like boundless energy at all hours of the day to work on things. But you do have an intuitive understanding of that thing that we were talking about before. So from like an art direction standpoint or a creative direction standpoint, you can jump in if there's multiple people working on a project and say like, hey, this is the thing that matters. You see someone spinning their wheels on this tiny piece of the thing over there, and you're like, when we show that to the client or when we show this to people, they will not even look at that. Like the thing that you're like, this one or this one, it doesn't matter.
This is super important to you. I realize, and I understand from like a creative standpoint, but like we got to think kind of like a business here right now too, which is like we have a limited amount of hours, we have a limited amount of resources.
Right.
We have to do it as well as we can. But yeah, I get what you're saying.
And also just being like, can you, how good are you at cosplaying as the client or the person who's actually going to look at this thing? Can you put yourself in their shoes for a second and see what they're going to see, which is a thing that's much harder to do when you're a younger designer and you get better at when you get older. You know how people are going to react to things and what they're looking for.
I think that's a great transition into kind of like talking about the creative side of your all's work or creative side of your life. Like, Cassaro, I know that you went to art school. Christopherson, did you also go to art school?
Yeah, I went to art school in northern Utah, in Ogden, Utah, at Weber State University.
And Cassaro, you went to New York.
I went to SVA and School of Visual Arts in Manhattan for graphic design, but I also went to a different sort of fine arts college for like a semester right after I got out of school and was promptly removed from the campus.
What does that mean?
I just wasn't ready to go to college, and I didn't really go to my classes and kind of just dropped out after the first semester.
Yeah.
There was a thing that happened where there was never any question that I was going to like go and do art when I graduated from high school, but I didn't really know what the applied part of that was. So I was like, I'll go to art school for fine arts, and I went there and I was like, I don't really feel like I'm part of this thing, like studio classes and things like that. Like I didn't.
Was it too organized? What was it like?
No, like wasn't organized enough. Maybe I feel like I needed something that felt like a little bit more applied, and that's why I think something like doing graphic design, illustration, and those things always felt like they kind of clicked for me because I could see the parameters.
Yeah, like the structure, like the art for art's sake never made sense for me. Like I needed a function or a reason to make the thing, and just making something beautiful or nice looking just never was enough motivation. That said, I'm glad that people are motivated by just making things beautiful to make them beautiful. Yeah. Christopherson, what's your experience in that?
I think maybe Dan and I, like in our timing, we probably hit a similar thing. Dan had a few like Rumspringa years where he went and did his thing. I went on a Mormon mission, so I sort of lost a couple years,
So you were rebelling younger in your life from like a lot of the structures that were put around you, but you still did the mission. Like, was that why?
It was crazy. It was just like a light switch. 18 years old, I was just in full like punk rebellion mode, having not really anything to do with organized religion. And then two things happened really quickly. My tight group of friends all decided like, fine, let's go. A little bit in the culture of Utah, you're either you go straight to college. Are you going to do like military? Are you going to like go volunteer? Or you have this like funnel everyone can just fall into and go out on a mission. And my mom pulled me aside and she said, listen, I know you don't really believe in it. I know it's not like important to you, but this is a chance I wish I had. And if you take advantage of this, whatever you do in your life, you're going to do better having like gone, learn a language, live in a different country, volunteer a little bit. Yeah. 100%. And I just saw this like sincerity, and I was like, oh shit, man, I probably got to take advantage of this. And I ended up going to Zurich, Switzerland. Right? She was totally right. I went to Switzerland for 2 years. I mean, it was amazing. It was beautiful. I learned this language, it was amazing. I learned a lot of like soft like people skills, like approaching a stranger and disarming a conversation, and fast friends kind of idea.
Because you get rejected like constantly.
Yep. Yeah, constantly. But like,
So you're like all these art nerds in your school, you're like, you guys can't handle a little bit of a critique. Man, I was getting doors slammed in my face for 2 years.
Yeah, it was easy to like present work that I thought was really precious or important and have somebody be like, this is garbage, and be like, okay, cool, and move to the next idea.
I've heard that 800 times. I can handle one more. Yeah.
But flanking that idea in high school, I had a really great art teacher. I was still fully in this idea that like, I'm going to paint graffiti characters my whole life and that'll be my job, And I saw an ad in like Snowboarder magazine or Skateboarder magazine that was art directed and illustrated by an artist named Joe Soren. And he was just like a fine artist, like pop surrealist kind of guy, but he was using his paintings for graphic, advertisements.
Yeah.
And a thing clicked for me where I could see a little bit of that path, like, oh, he's selling skateboards or snowboards with these illustrations. And I previously was doing a lot of like t-shirts for local bands or whatever. And I think I could see a little bit of like commercial art, connections there, but then came back from my mission and just did fine art school, and realized one day, like across the hall was like the computer lab where like the illustrators and graphic design students were. And I then realigned my fine art and painting with what was happening over there. And I think that was like an aha moment for me.
What was school like?
Going to SVA was great. And prior to going to SVA, I was living in Connecticut for some unknown reason for a while. So going to art school also coincided with like my return to New York. So I came back to New York and had a little bit of this feeling from when I got there, because I was a little bit older at this point. I was like 22 years old. I'm a freshman at art school, that I was sort of like playing catch up. So I always had a little bit of that feeling the whole time, that I had to work harder, catch up, prove that I, could do this. And there was an reason that I waited so long to do this. But it was great because the campus for SVA is like New York City. So all of your classes are in buildings that are just littered all around, like, 14th Street. And
did it feel instantly competitive because it was in the city, and that city is competitive?
I don't know. I don't have like a reference point for a different type of a way of going to school, but it felt very communal to me. There's always like a little bit of competition when you're around people that are doing the same thing, but it never felt like a nice competition or something like that. Cool. Like you would see other things that people were working on. There was a lot of like group shows that people would put on like in the school or outside of the school. And you'd see other people's work and get inspired by it. But
I'll tell you why it wasn't competitive. It didn't feel competitive for Dan, is because he was really good. He showed up and had, again, just sort of, you tooted my horn, I'll toot his horn, but like he showed up and had already a really, really strong, like preloaded, like taste level for letters and composition and stuff. And so for him, he was like, cool, I finally get a chance to get all this stuff out of my brain. And, I'm sure for him, it was like, he jumped right in and could create really beautiful work and do all this sort of like lettering and stuff. And so it was probably, not to speak for you, but a funner experience rather than being like, oh shit, I'm a, small fish in a big pond.
It was very exciting and inspiring, and it did feel like I was getting positive feedback on a different type of creativity that I hadn't, because my whole life people have been like, Danny's good at art or whatever, and it would be like, well, what does that mean? What are you gonna do with that or something? And this was the first time when I was like doing these sort of applied things of like doing cool lettering, making posters and things like that, and people giving me positive feedback. And I remember like the chair of the graphic design program at SVA, when they do like in-person portfolio reviews at the end of my first year, and he just like wrote a note on my portfolio. He was like, you seem to have an aptitude for letters. And I was like, oh, okay. And that was the first time someone was like, oh, this specific thing. So that sort of stuck with me, and that was a thing that I was already interested in. But I think that was like a point where I was like, okay, maybe this could be my thing.
When did it become professional for both of you?
So when I was at school, I was tracked for print design, but then I got into motion graphics, and I also graduated with like a motion graphics degree or whatever. So my first jobs were doing animation. So I got jobs like right out of school because there was such a demand for people doing
Yeah,
animation.
MTV, right? Were you going to, is that when you went to?
Eventually, I took a full-time job at MTV, but for like the first year or 2 years, I would just freelance. I would go in and I'd get paid what was a crazy amount of money at that time for me
Yeah.
to just go and do day rates at kind of Comedy Central, VH1, and all the sort of like cable networks of just doing animation. But I was sort of animating other people's work at that time. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't
Right.
doing any of the actual design. But on the side, I'm like doing personal projects. I'm like getting hired to do spot illustrations, editorial kind of stuff, you know? So there's like this freelance world that's like creeping up on me while I'm technically freelancing as an animator. And I took a job at MTV doing design and animation. So I'm doing design and animation at MTV. And I kept that job for exactly 1 year and then quit and went full-time freelance after that. Because over the course of that year, I was sort of like building up, like trying to get my work on design blogs and taking on little apparel freelance projects and things like that.
Your style was very, very unique, and you were focusing on letters, which were at that time still kind of like a new type of way of really, really like showing your design and illustrative skills. And there was like a huge splash at that point. And then you did 50 by 50. I mean, I know that was a couple years later, but then that had a huge success. And so all this publicity is just kind of bringing in more and more opportunities for the freelance work, right?
Yeah. And then to your point about like lettering being that was like the golden age of being a freelance letterer. Like you would get work from these big design agencies and they would be like, all right, here's the concept for our ad. It's lettering. You know what I mean? Like there was like, it was such a weird thing looking back on it now, because if they come and they pitch like, here's our idea for this ad that we're going to do, they're like, it's this style, and it's this joke. Yeah. But back then they were like, it's just going to be lettering. We just want lettering. A cool lettering is what we're doing for this ad from McDonald's or whatever it is.
And because you were inventing a bunch of that stuff, they were like, and we want it to look like this other thing you did. And you're like, cool, man.
Yeah, totally. So, but and it paid the bills, and it allowed, me to kind of do the creative stuff that I wanted to do at that time.
And what about you, Christopherson? Like, so you graduate school. When did it become professional for you?
I had a much harder time. In Utah, I think it was really easy for me to like produce cool little illustrations or icons in my specific style that were like very woven in like at the time there was something cool going on about just like hands and swords and beehives and birds and like building crests with all that shit. And I think it was really helpful or great aesthetic to just post some punchy Instagram image, but not a lot of use outside of that in whatever I was doing.
Yeah.
So I took a job at a credit card company.
Wow.
That was just, I was just trying to kind of like learn all the graphic design stuff that maybe I focused on less in school. In school, I did a heavy emphasis on, it was a visual communications degree, but you could split and either do graphic design or illustration. So using my fine art, I still stuck with a lot of like fine art illustration, and there just wasn't a real ecosystem for me to do like beautiful portraits for like a magazine or, do anything with it. So I kind of just had to jump in and get a job. I got, as Mormons do, I got married really young. I already had to kind of, pay for a life. So I worked at a credit card agency, which was a little bit soul sucking, but my friends and, I knew the founders of it. So they paid me really well. I was learning how to do like newsletters and HTML and, all those sort of things to kind of cut my teeth. And then it's
always good to get paid to learn, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel really,
even if you don't want that job, like, can you learn something there, and will they pay you to learn it?
Yeah. And, like, quick little side note, it was my first opportunity. This credit card company was like, listen, we're building some technologies and we're building this company and it could be something one day. I was thinking of leaving this credit card company and going to start like, go to a real agency or something. And they encouraged me to stay, and they gave me some shares in this company that I actually forgot about years later. And then in the middle of COVID, I got a call from a lawyer saying, hey, you still have these shares and this company just got bought. We got to send you a check for, $200,000 or something like that.
Shut
And
up.
it was wild, man. I like put a down payment on my house in Philly. It kind of,
yes.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really cool. So I'll sort of always be.
I mean, those very rarely ever work.
Very rarely ever
When
work
someone
out.
incentivizes you with like shares, it very rarely turns into money.
Yeah. And I was too young at the time. I remember I was too young and too inexperienced to take advantage of it. And my sales manager at the company took me aside and said, you should do this. Whatever it is, you should do it. In fact, I'll pay for you to buy those shares and we'll split it when it comes, if anything comes of it. So thanks, Dave Wilkes.
Dude.
Yeah, it was
Shout
huge.
out Dave.
Yeah. But it took me a lot longer to even figure out, is this real? Is something going to happen? Just because my path was a little bit weirder, and it was much harder for me to like see clients on the horizon, see worth in the work,
Yeah, man, I get it. And I think that just like can be an encouragement to people that are listening also. Like both these guys, massive talents, and there's just different, some of it's luck, some of it's talent, some of it's timing. It's just like, how do those things kind of come together? But you can't lay down. Like you got to keep on doing the next thing. When did you guys meet?
We met we had spoken online just through email, actually through the 50 and 50 project that you were talking about before. Dan had emailed me and was like, dude, you need to let me do Utah, because it was one of the things where everyone was doing lettering for their home state or whatever. 1550 was like this personal project that I started, because I thought it was interesting, because I loved lettering, because of all of those reasons, but also as a tool to like meet all of these designers and meet people and become part of this industry. But the idea was that we would have a designer or illustrator, letterer, whatever person from each of their home states design their state motto, using these parameters that I set, color palette, dimension, and things like that. Then we'd have this big tapestry of all these different mottos by all these different people. And I did New York, and then I found, 49 other people to do it. But Dan had written me and he was like, dude, I saw your thing. You have to let me do Utah. I'm the most Utah person in the world. And I had already asked.
You might be the only graphic designer in Utah. Right
Yeah,
now.
I was just like,
and it was a huge regret, but I had already asked somebody else to do it. I was like, I'm sorry, man, but also I'm going to this conference. Are you going to this conference? And he was. It was a graphic design conference in Cleveland called. What's it called?
Weapons of Mass Creation.
Weapons of Mass Creation.
WMC Fest.
WMC.
Deeb, did you ever go to one of those?
I didn't.
No.
Those were like the first ones, right?
Yeah, they were
like
so fun. It was like early.
They set the template for all of the other sort of beardy boy graphic design fests. But we met at that. We were just me and Dan and our other friend Nate Utesh were like, let's meet, let's hang out. And so the three of us met each other for the first time, and we just sort of hit it off and like hung out the whole weekend, became pals. And I think me and Dan just got along right from the start. I think there's something that predates us working together, like at Young Jerks, that sort of like set the template for how we work together, or maybe why we even started officially as a partnership at Young Jerks, because we would hire each other for these jobs. And I think there was this like quickness and shorthand for how we work together.
Yeah.
So like Dan was saying,
you spoke the same language. You understood the goal.
I couldn't believe how quick we were able to do some of the stuff. Like we got hired to build a bunch of assets for a restaurant, a bunch of typographic assets, illustrations, and like I sort of briefed Dan real quick. I'm like, we need this thing. We need like 3 crabs in this style, or like whatever the thing was. And he just sort of like hammered it out, and it was perfect, and it got approved instantly, and the work looked great. And I was like, oh man, maybe there's like something here. And that happened a couple more times where we can kind of lock our two styles together.
Like we make each other stronger.
Definitely.
We double or triple the amount of work we would do on our own.
Yeah, totally.
Let's break down the business now. So you guys, you both are these extremely talented creatives who started off in your own careers. You become fast friends and start working together more regularly. You decide to start an agency. But at what point did it start to become like a business?
So we talked quite a bit about, our first real hire. There were a couple like juniors, like there was our friend Alicia came and worked with us for a little while at our studio, and we had just like a friend of a friend, Adeline, come work at the studio. She was so sweet. She was like a studio manager and just kind of helped. But it essentially set us up for what we saw as like, oh, we're doing all this work. We're working project to project. Dan and I would meet Monday morning and with a sketchbook, like write out what we wanted to finish that week and who we wanted to email back. But no
It was
real
hard
like,
for us to see past
yeah,
week
Each
and the
week,
one
yeah.
deadline that we had at the end of the week. Like it was very still freelancer coded in our brains, I think.
Yeah.
And hiring a studio manager for just a little bit, Adeline made us realize, and she handed everything over to Meg, but made us realize that we could do quite a bit more if we could hire somebody like a Meg to look at the books, look at everything, and then essentially, this is Meg's philosophy, like create a really well paved road with strong guardrails and lines painted on the road so that Dan and I can go as fast as we want. Without thinking we're going to fall off, And so hiring a creative ops person to then look at things. And I remember day one or day two, she was like, okay, we're using Slack, we're using Basecamp, we're using all these sort of things. And now all your projects are on there. You have deadlines. And I was like, oh, this rules, man. I just sit down and I see what I got going. And like, she started thinking about financial goals. And I remember the first week looking back at her computer and she was already playing with different software. And I was like, Dan and I are just figuring this out. What's going on? And she was like, well, I don't know. I'm just going to see. Maybe there's something better out there. And she didn't care. Like it was so cool to know that somebody was managing the studio and all those operational tasks in a way that we were managing creative tasks. And it changed overnight like that,
Yeah, it happened really quick. And Meg has also just consistently been great at being like, I've gathered more information about how we do things. I'm going to switch this thing now. We're going to do this thing now this way. And to her credit, like Dan was sort of saying, she, on some level, I think, appreciates and sees the value in like whatever our creative ADHD brains are. And that like every time we build a new presentation for a client, we reformat it and we build a new, you know what I mean? Like whatever that insane energy that is kind of bad for business a little bit, but is really a part of who we are, like always wanting to like do things a little bit different or do things weirder rather than systematize things. I think she sees that and appreciates it and sees the value in a creative studio, and that's like a little bit of the magic of what we do.
Those people are really hard to find, like the ones that can be left brain but can not get totally burned out by right brain people.
Married to someone who's ADHD too.
So
he has been incentivized to learn how to, and when she married him, she also had training from dealing with us for all of those years beforehand too. So she has lots of experience with like, whatever.
Did you just get lucky? Or I mean, did you guys have like, I'm assuming you guys just got lucky. Like you didn't have like a process for hiring where you were like vetting people with certain standards.
I don't think we really knew what to look for. I remember my biggest concern when we were hiring Meg was and I'm not trying to be funny. This is literally what I said.
She knows this.
I don't, can she hang? We got to make sure she can hang. Like that was what I cared about. Like we didn't know what we were really looking for. We knew we needed someone with this skill set, but we didn't really know the type of person. And Meg, it just worked out with Meg.
Yeah. I mean, the attitude of your brand is so important. Like for you all specifically, like it is a very, very specific point of view. And big part of that is like fun and lighthearted and it's not rigid, right? Like a lot of agency work is rigid and tight and it needs to be for some businesses and for some, solutions. But like, I mean, the culture of your space, like you got to go in and you got to feel like you're not chained to your work or chained to your projects. Like you got to feel, or like chained to your team. Like you got to feel like everyone wants to be there. Everyone's enjoying themselves.
Yeah. We actually were just talking about that the other day. We had a really, really great call with a client that we've been working with for a while. And so much of our relationship so far has just been all of the like brief building together, you know, we're like unpacking strategy together, figuring out messaging. And so like they've just been so patient. Like, when are you going to show us some fucking colors and letters that we can finally, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And we finally showed them like some mood boards, and we're pitching naming to them. It was just like a pretty great like first creative jump all together, and the meeting was really great. And afterward we were like, man, I love those guys. There's like such good energy. And we talked about how we had done so much hard work on friendship building, and Dan and I, for better or for worse, making sure every meeting has a little bit of like a laugh. And I think specifically like drop a swear word, remind them that we can't take any of this too seriously, even though you're investing tons of money in us, because if we allow ourselves to disarm a little bit of this and break it back down, then our personal brains at night that enjoy the work are going to think on it, and the good feelings we have for each other are going to permeate the joy of the work that we do. And it all came together, and I was like, man, that's why we've been doing this, man. Like all along, we've been making sure that whatever the serious part just gets cut halfway through with like a bad joke, or Dan will like poke fun at me across the call and like give them all permission to be like, oh, these two guys are buddies, you know?
A huge amount of the credit for that is all Christopherson, because that's just innately who he is. And he also handles a lot of most of our new biz calls he will be on. So he's doing a lot of that relationship building, not because he thinks it's like, well, I mean, I think we know it's good for business, but I think that's just who he is as a person. So it's really become like a part of the studio. But like he was saying, when that groundwork is there and you have this relationship, it makes presenting the work a joy, because you're like just chatting with your friends, and it doesn't feel like you're like up there on a firing squad or something like that, or you have to like, you know, be Don Draper standing in front of a giant easel with an ad on it being like, please like me, you know. It's not, that energy is not there, and that makes it easier for me, at least when I'm presenting. If you walk into the meeting and you have this energy of like, I want you to like me, I want you to like this thing, like, please like me, and you come into it with like a people pleaser energy, then people like sniff that out a little bit, and then they'll try to drive the ship a little bit. So I think there's something cool about being able to walk into it and be like, we're buds, we're confident in our work, and we're friends, and it just allows the whole process. Everyone feels like more safe in the process when you approach it like that.
We also do this thing where we call it out from the very beginning, like, the biggest fear is that you're going to spend money on something that you don't like, or you're going to hire us and we're going to show you something that you don't like. And let me tell you, sister, that's our biggest fear too.
Yeah, we're worried about that too.
We're gonna do all this work.
We're more scared than you.
We're more scared than you guys are. We're gonna put all of this work and all this effort in, and then show you something. You know, we're gonna tighten our ties and be like, we did this cool. So let's start at a place where we're both scared together. But we personally at Young Jerks have built a whole career off of like being scared of showing something, but being really excited about it, and then talking through how to fix it, you know?
And we're also end up in that position a lot where we do have people that have those specific fears, because we work with a lot of like early, medium stage startups that are people that are building their own thing.
Money's not growing on trees for them, you know, it's not coming.
And they're taking a huge chance on this thing. They're already scared to death, or at least nervous about, you know, is this thing going to work? It's not like it's some big company that is like, oh, we'll throw this money into this thing and we don't really care how it works as long as it checks these boxes. They're like, I need to feel like this could be the rest of my life, you know? So it's already loaded up with that kind of emotion. So it does help to kind of meet them there and talk about that stuff.
You talked about going in and having the people pleaser attitude. Like, I've been in a few situations where that's burned me, where I've tried to come in with that, and like the person is just a shark or just like a bully, and like then they're just pushing you around. And it's like, you're like, fuck. Like, it's really hard to go backwards after you've kind of established that.
Yeah. But I want to build the relationship with everybody, that like I'll bring the project to the team and be like, guys, this is perfect for us. And which forces then, because I'm so heavy handed with that, Dan and Meg being like, or the rest of the team being like, cool, but it's really not, and like whatever, and like whittle down the scope to where the things that it might work. And then,
Yeah.
so I really do have to learn, but also I was hired for this thing to bring that energy and bring that sales,
Yeah, you have a role.
Yeah.
We also get the benefit of when both of us aren't on a call, that like when those questions do come up that you want to say yes to right away without thinking about what the ramifications are, you can be like, oh, I'll check. That sounds cool. I'm going to check with Dan and we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That is the magic.
100%.
Having people that you can be like, I have to check with my other Dan.
Yeah.
Is such
Yeah,
a
or
huge
create a
benefit for
barrier.
us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes they forget.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so we got to talk about Snakes of Wrath, especially this transition. So you guys are kind of rolling. You've been building business, you've been building your team, picking up all these great clients through Young Jerks, and so things are working. But I guess at some point a few years ago, you all had an idea to start a new business. You want to kind of walk me through that?
Yeah, and just to put a finer point on the Young Jerks, we have a full solid 10 years of consistent,
Amazing.
Yeah. This year's 10 years.
yeah.
That's
So like
amazing.
project to project to project, year over year, growing, understanding that. So at this point, 10 years in, strong Meg, strong ops team, strong designers. I can't say enough about like Brett and Kelly and Joe and Victoria.
They're the best.
So that feels. We even had a couple conversations where we're like, we've gone through COVID, we've gone through this and this. Like we feel like that thing is pretty set, just to sort of set the stage for Weast Coast.
Dan and I had always talked about that we're going to do something. We have all this experience. We love like building brands for other people and everything that comes along with it. We're going to have our own brand one day. What's it going to be? Is it going to be clothing? For a long time, we were like, we're going to make a candy brand because that just seemed like the most fun thing to do.
Yeah.
And then it turned out to be games. But that happened through, we would play games during our lunch breaks when we'd all have lunch together or whatever. I had a card game that I made a long time ago, almost like 9 years ago, that we used to play in the studio. And we were like, oh, we should make this one day. We never did. And then a couple of years later, I had an idea for this sort of like domino game with snakes on it. And I made a prototype version with Sharpie and blank dominoes and brought that in. And we would play that all the time. And then through Meg's encouragement, she was like, you guys should make this a real game.
So she was a big part of the catalyst of what kind of launched it, or what pushed you to launching it?
I think she was really helpful in that Dan and I wanted to do something, but the biggest unknown and the hardest part to like stay motivated on is the production and like actually, as you know,
Logistics.
Yeah. So I think, just needed her confidence to come to a meeting and say, I can get this done. I know I can. And she has great experience. And she's also just like, incredibly sharp. So then Dan and I went back and said, man, then games is probably our move. Meg is also just always been a game player. And I think it takes patience with somebody who's like, every day, like replaying the game, play testing, great insight. So games were in her heart too. And that helped us.
Yeah. Yeah. Meg does deserve a lot of that credit, because I think coming up with ideas for like, wouldn't it be cool if we did this? Like Dan and I can do that all day, and we've done that a million times. But for someone to say, okay, let's actually do it, and I can help.
But I'm I'm ready to go down this path with you.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Dan Cassaro, you designed this tile game. You're drawing with Sharpie. You bring it into the office. You guys are playing around the office, and then it slowly develops. I mean, I remember playing the hand-drawn prototype with you all at a bar in Brooklyn. I don't know, 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time coming. I think we had talked about wanting to do it. The plan was to do it at some point, and we sort of felt really confident in like the gameplay, like what the game actually was. And then it was during the pandemic, when we were all separated from each other, that we were like, maybe now is a good time to start working on it. But we were obsessed with it. Like Meg especially. Like Meg and I had a game that a game of Snakes of Wrath that we played during the pandemic. We both had our own set, because I had drawn a set for her that we played over phone by sending pictures to each other. So I would
Amazing.
have my hand of 7 tiles or whatever. I would play my move, like those sort of like chess games by mail. And then I would send her a picture of like what my board looked like. And she would find the tile that I had used and put it on. And then she would play her move and send it back.
Or additionally, once COVID sort of was wrapping, Dan and Meg would meet in the city on like a Friday or something at our studio. Like they'd both drive in, or and I would like lose them for a few hours on Slack and be like, "Hey guys," and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we just invented a new game together, or we just played this thing." Which in the end is like incredibly helpful to have, another brain bouncing ideas off of, Dan.
Yeah, but it's also just like feeding the energy and the momentum of the project. Yeah. So it progresses. You end up launching a Kickstarter. It does enormously well. I should have looked it up, but it's over 200, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
what did you all land on?
250 or something like that.
Which do you remember Babe Ruthing that?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say you helped us out a lot with how we had a couple of meetings with you where we were like, how much do we charge for this thing? What can we expect? And this and that, and you helped out a lot.
Yeah, I mean, we can stop there for a second because this is a lesson that you all learned, that I learned, like the transition from going from like digital goods to physical goods. And there's just so many more costs, man. It's just like, I think that was the situation that I remember you all were going through was and this is very normal too. It's just like trying to do a price analysis, like how much should I charge for something? It becomes like, you don't want to overcharge 100%, but then when you're new to it, you don't realize the danger, like the life-changing danger you can have if you undercharge, because there are so many hidden costs and risks that you don't account for, whether it's lost inventory or it's tariffs or it's like all these things that can completely sink your business that don't exist in the freelance digital space.
Yeah, no, it's true. And we had all of those things happen. And like if we didn't have this other business, Young Jerks, to help like soften the blow, like we had to pay an insane amount of money just because our first shipment of snakes got flagged by customs and had to spend the weekend in a warehouse, and we had to pay for that for some reason, and it was like $10,000 that we just didn't account for or something like that. So, that's enough to crater any business. It's crazy, but that was definitely something that we have learned over time.
Can you relate to this? I mean, this is an experience I had, and this was actually around because I was more so than I think both of you all, even though I know you all dabbled in it, was the gig poster culture. That was like my formative years as a graphic designer, was really doing, show posters for touring bands. There was a moment when I realized how just fleeting it was. Like you would spend all this energy and stress and excitement on designing these pieces of art for these touring bands, and they would go up and they get torn down, and maybe some people would keep them or whatever, but it was just like, wow, this is like a revolving door of forgetfulness, so just things to be forgotten.
Yeah.
And I got really disillusioned with kind of graphic design and designing in the digital space. And that was probably the biggest thing that really drew me to the physical space, the thing I love. And that's what you guys are talking about with the game being on the real world. But there's another side of it, which is not what motivated you all to do it, but it's a reality, which is that theme that you built at Weast Coast, Snakes of Wrath, and Desperate Oasis. It's scalable. Like it could come to a point where that theme starts selling itself more easily. Yep. And you've already put in the work, and it can really grow and grow and grow and grow. Yeah. Whereas like the contract to contract thing, it's pure profit for the most part. It's like, it's a lot lower risk. You're not going to necessarily lose any money by doing it. But you're always going to have to wait for the next contract, and that it never ends.
I think that's a huge point. And Dan and I, when we started thinking about like, do we do a candy? Do we do our own soda pop or whatever? The idea was, I think we were just starting to feel the like mortality, or the idea of like mid 40s, let's say we have 20 more years to really do this, something that scales. And even when we established Weast Coast as a business, me and Dan and Meg started talking about like, okay, let's think about the exit of this, which was the first time we thought about that. And I think
that's a business thought right there.
Yeah. Let's think about licensing. Let's thinking about selling a game to a bigger game company.
Yeah.
Let's think about all those things.
But I think I wanted to go back to this part about, or to make a point about when we jumped into this thing, just how hungry, prepared, and ready we were to launch a product, just because we had done so many launch campaigns for brands before. We pay attention to that stuff all day. We know how to make, die lines and send them to factories. All of that stuff. There was so much stuff that we learned that we couldn't have prepared for, and so much stuff that Meg had to learn too that we didn't know. But in general, for like the public facing part of it, we were so ready out of the gate. Like Dan has become this really talented photographer in the past couple of years. So just, we were able to like write a script and shoot like a commercial for it, and all of these things we felt so confident and ready to do. So when the game arrived, it really felt like we set ourselves up for success just because of the 10 previous years of sort of working in the industry.
Yeah.
And there was something that was so satisfying to have like all of these pieces like finally click together for us.
Well, it's brilliant, man. It's beautiful. Everything you built around it. The artwork, of course, that's a no-brainer, but then the gameplay is amazing. The physicalness of it, like all the little touches, the bag, everything. All those cool little accessories that you've created with them, whether it's a card or a toad or whatever. It really, really is incredible. So you spent the last several years designing and launching, 2 games for Weast Coast. You're still working client to client for Young Jerks and that's growing, your team's growing, and that's going great. But as far as Weast Coast goes, this seems like this might be the opportunity to have like a retirement, something that could really continue to pay you as you stop working, rigorously. What's working for you in that? Like what's clicking, what's making sense? And then like, what do you see the next 5 years, 10 years looking for that?
I, in a kind of funny way, or maybe a good ADHD way, as soon as we like sold out of our first snakes, even though we weren't profitable, we just resolved our Kickstarter or whatever. I was like, damn, dude, let's just quit Young Jerks, man. Let's just like bring Brett and Kelly and everyone over to Weast Coast. And he's like, cool. Yeah, it doesn't work like that. I'm like, oh man, bummer. So I was like instantly ready to have it be our
to build something.
Thing. Yeah, to build something and like just buy and sell games. So I think from my perspective, our goal was to really get Young Jerks dialed. We're incredibly lucky to have, Brett and Kelly as like crazy talented designers that sort of like pick up whatever we might leave off if we're doing Weast Coast days. We're incredibly talented to have like a taskmaster like Meg who can kind of facilitate timing on Weast Coast projects and Young Jerks projects, all while Young Jerks funds Weast Coast. But I totally see it as a thing where we get better and better at like licensing, scaling. We have 5 games in the hopper coming out after, we're launching one.
Oh yeah.
We're launching one
5?
We're launching one called Fruit Boss in November.
You guys, I have just seen this for the first time. Go to the back. Show me the back of it again. Oh my gosh. Are you guys illustrating this one as well?
Yeah. These are all based on some paintings that Dan Christopherson had hanging up in his house, and I was like, we should make a card game based on those illustrations. But we have that. We have art like done for another game, and then we have art semi-done for another game, and just like a lot of just sort of like...
How are you financing this? You said, obviously Young Jerks is contributing.
We're financing it through enthusiasm, Deep.
Yeah. Optimism, enthusiasm, naivety.
I think, we took a loan from Young Jerks to start it, but last year we were technically profitable by like $1 or something like that.
Yeah. I've been there. I know that.
Our profits.
Yeah. Going back to what you were saying about, raising 250 on your campaign, barely being profitable or maybe not being profitable at all. That's something that like, I think a lot of people outside of the business, they look and they don't realize, they assume they see you everywhere. They assume that they know that you have good sales. They assume that you're just like sitting on a pile of money. And it's like, dude, I'm getting used to it, but I cannot believe how much money I have to spend every month to keep this thing alive. It's bonkers.
It's crazy. And the reason that big companies can do it. I mean, it's in this is industry specific, but I'm sure there's some version of it for you too. But like the biggest complaint that we get or comment that we get on Snakes of Brass, sometimes they're like, come on, make it cheaper. This much money for Domino's or whatever. And we're like, dude, we're not making that much money off of these things, you know? We should be probably charging more for it, you know? And
like this is us being generous.
Right.
Like our price is our generous price.
I mean, if you could compare like the thing that we're making to other board games, like what the flimsy box that it's in, and like the quality of the fabric, and it's not, you know, and
but also
everything
the
is made out
scale.
of cardboard.
They're doing 100,000 pieces. You guys are doing 2,000 pieces.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So people have expectations about like how much a board game should cost or whatever, you know. And,
I do think those are important times for guys like you and brands like us too, like to educate people. And hopefully this podcast can serve as that too, is help people understand like this is something something about owning my business that has changed the way that I spend money is I very rarely now ask how much something is. I ask who gets it.
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
That's what matters to me. Who gets my money, not how much does it cost. Now there is a balance. You can't overspend. There's real realities to budgets and everything.
You do that like McDonald's? Where do you do that?
All right, I'll get some hamburgers.
Dude, McDonald's is getting as expensive as the mom and pop shop.
Who's the pickle farmer here? I think that's really important that you say that, just because we're trying to be really careful about how we grow, because it means a lot to us. It's a lot of fun, but there are so many hard costs involved in it. Yeah. And then on top of that, we have to build. Our time is so limited, and we're aware of that we have to build an ecosystem of like vendors that help us with ad placement and with shipping. We have a shipping partner that handles all of our stuff and all of those things. It's just like all the money goes right back out to them. And so we have to be very careful about how it grows so that it doesn't just become a one-to-one thing where, you know, we're right back to where we started and we might as well just build prototypes for us to play if that's what.
Yeah.
But just talking about how things are working out, there is a struggle. I think maybe I feel it the most. I don't want to speak for you, but in terms of like how I'm supposed to split my time between Young Jerks and Weast Coast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's enough work to keep us occupied at both of those companies. So it becomes this thing where I just have to, and Dan too, just has to make an emotional decision about like, what do I work on right now? And it's a struggle because there's the thing that you feel enthusiastic about, and there's the thing that you have to do, and there's the thing that probably makes sense for you to be working on. So that is a new type of juggling that has just shown up in the past couple of years.
Well, just encourage you guys. I mean, you guys really have something with Weast Coast, and until it's obvious that you don't, you got to keep on putting money into it and taking risks and seeing how far you go. And I really encourage you guys to listen to how I built this and maybe find a brand that you like. But really, oftentimes the brands that are like, you know, like Stonyfield Farm yogurt is a great episode. Yeah. Like, I don't care about Stonyfield Farm yogurt, but it's like a great episode on like endurance through all the hardships of growing a business. But everyone is like in that position where like it doesn't make practical sense to keep doing this, but there's something here that I gotta explore and figure out. And then, you know, when brands are lucky enough, they have a big opportunity that arises. And you all know, like no one promises us that, you know, like I almost closed the doors last year, like, you know, and we're good now, but like, it's just crazy. Like, you know, how much failure is just right around the corner. But I really want you guys to hear me, like, as someone who's in this space and has a lot of visibility on like what's out there, like you have something really special, and like just a couple things have to turn on for it to become like a consistent source of growth, like, and like significant growth. Where do those, that's the problem. Like, I don't know where those faucets are that you turn on to get that type of momentum, because I'm still looking for them also, but like, I know they're out there because I've seen other people turn them on, and like, it's amazing.
In our industry, there's definitely an appetite for more games. Like if you
Innovation.
you like a game company, you like the way that this one looks, your immediate thing is like, oh, do they make any other ones or whatever?
Yeah.
And right now we have two, and we watch the way that like other publishers. Not that we're like totally tracked with just the board gaming space, because I think we're day walking between two worlds here a little bit with the company that we're building here. But I watch like the timelines of how other game companies release games, and they just always have two coming out next quarter or something like that. And we just don't have the...
Yeah, like I work in fragrance. So if someone likes one of my fragrances, they come back to me every 3 months. You work in games. And, I didn't have that before when we worked in like leather and playing cards and all that stuff. But now that we work in fragrance, we have that customer that is really easy to retain. You all have to kind of re-innovate and reintroduce, or you have to continually find new customers constantly.
Right.
And they're out there. I mean, the new customers are out there too, but you want to retain the ones that you're already bringing in.
But yeah, the first game convention we went to, we walked the halls for a half an hour. We got overwhelmed. We regrouped and sat down, and I was like, this is overwhelming. This is crazy, but also this is endless. It stopped my worry about like, are we going to hit the end of the road for Snake's buyers or whatever? We realized it was endless.
Board games is crazy, man. And it's like doubling year after year in terms like people realize that they like playing board games during the pandemic. And it was already on a growth track or whatever. And now they just kept on playing them, and more people are playing them. So the appetite for them is out there. But about...
And your all's point of view, your all's style, it's so unique.
Yeah. There's people, and it's a lot of couples. It's a lot of people that like have that emotional experience or like memory making experience when they're playing it. Like people have played Snakes of Wrath, and then they're like, when are you going to do another one? Me and my wife love Snakes of Wrath. We love Desperate Oasis. What are you guys doing next? You know what I mean?
Which is awesome because you guys love making them. So there's a lot of pressure to continue to make, right? But it's also like a proven growth strategy. Like make.
There's a thing that's a little bit insatiable too around the idea that like, oh man, this is the final boss of graphic design. You get to do the invention of the game as a toy, the packaging,
100%
stuff. And so like in my head, I won't stop. And Dan's even more voracious than this, but like I won't stop until we've put out our 10 games. We've put out all 10 of those games in different languages. All of those games have a cute little app that go with them. All of the, and then see if it's worthwhile. So they're like, the ramp to the business is like so far that we're motivated to do it because we've seen pieces of all these games we could do, and like just we just need time.
And it's not hard to find motivation because there's been this huge validating thing where like the Snakes of Wrath, Desperate Oasis, and this new game are like so much of Dan and I's personality without checking with like what we think people would like. It was us just being like, wouldn't it be funny if we did this? Like 100%. This doesn't fit, like calling a game Fruit Boss doesn't really like fit into any sort of thing. It's just a thing that Dan and I think is funny. And so far, knock on wood, we've been validated, and like we do a dumb thing. With
that one's going to crush. Confidence. I can tell you right now. And I'm glad you guys changed the style. Obviously, I love the style of the last two games, but like they're so beautiful and they're so creative. But I love that you gave us something really poppy with that one. And I can see it in every gift store, and we'll talk about this maybe a little bit more offline, but like, I know that you guys had considered using Fair. We don't have to get into it now, but like, that's a really great resource for tapping into all like these, like small mom and pop gift stores all around the world.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm so inspired by both you guys. I feel so, and I mean this sincerely, like privileged to have you all as friends and having people willing to do this, especially without like, you didn't ask me to like prove anything. I didn't have any episodes to show you. So I really appreciate you all taking the time. For the listener, go check out Weast Coast, purchase the first 2 games, and keep an eye out for the other 5 that are in the pipeline. They're really fun. We saw them here at our shop, and these guys are brilliant. Thank you guys for being here. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Thanks, man.
Love you guys.
Always a pleasure. Love you too, bud.
Love you too, man. Thank you.
That's the end of our conversation. Thanks for listening. The music throughout the show comes from my friend, coworker, and musician Woods at Night. This episode was edited by TJ Hester. And like everything else here, it's a small group of people doing careful work. I'm Tyler Deeb. and this is The Infinite Errand.